Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling like your mind was scrambled, your heart heavy, and your confidence stolen, but you couldn't quite explain why? Like someone reached inside you and twisted reality just enough to make you question yourself? If that hits home, you may have crossed paths with a narcissist. These people don't need to shout or shove to cause harm. They do it with a smile, a sideways compliment, a guilt trip wrapped in charm. But what if I told you there's one simple, razor-sharp question that can shatter their illusion and expose who they really are? In today's video, we're not just uncovering the mind games they play, we're equipping you with the Stoic mindset to break free from their grip. As Marcus Aurelius said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Stay with me, because what you're about to discover could change how you handle every difficult person from this day forward. And hey, before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the wisdom that helps you protect your peace. Let's begin. Understanding the narcissist's playbook. To deal with narcissists effectively, we must first learn to see them clearly. Their behavior might seem unpredictable or chaotic on the surface, but in truth, it follows a distinct pattern, a calculated cycle of charm, control, manipulation, and emotional exploitation. At their core, narcissists are driven by a deep belief in their own superiority. They crave admiration, dodge accountability, and lack any genuine empathy. Their relationships aren't built on mutual respect or emotional connection. They are battlegrounds where they fight for power, and the weapon they use is your own emotion. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology gave it a name. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, reminded himself each morning that he would face arrogance, dishonesty, and selfishness to make himself bitter. But to prepare his spirit, the Stoic doesn't expect the world to be fair or people to be kind. Instead, he learns how to remain unshaken in the face of chaos. You cannot reason with a narcissist expecting sincerity. I learned this painfully during a business collaboration where a seemingly helpful partner subtly began shifting blame for delays, taking credit for shared efforts, and manipulating the team with false urgency. I caught myself constantly explaining, defending, trying to prove my good intentions, draining myself in the process. That's when I realized my emotional reaction was their fuel. As Epictetus taught, if someone provokes you, it is not the insult, but your own judgment that disturbs your peace. The moment you react, you hand over control. The moment you remain composed, you reclaim it. Recognizing the patterns, before we can use the question that exposes a narcissist, we need to train ourselves to see them clearly. Awareness is your first and greatest defense. If you can recognize the patterns early, you can avoid being pulled into the emotional chaos they create. Not everyone who is self-centered or difficult is a narcissist, but true narcissistic behavior follows a chillingly consistent script, one that leaves others emotionally drained, confused, and doubting themselves. One of the earliest red flags is a deep sense of entitlement. Narcissists expect the world to revolve around them. They see kindness as a service owed, and the moment you assert your own needs by saying no or setting a boundary, they react not with understanding, but with guilt-tripping, passive aggression, or subtle forms of punishment. I saw this unfold during a team project I once led. A colleague, charismatic and confident at first, began to demand exceptions, longer deadlines, special treatment, extra praise. When I finally held him accountable for missing a critical milestone, he didn't apologize. Instead, he questioned my leadership, spread doubt among the team, and suddenly acted like he was the victim. That's the moment I knew this wasn't about miscommunication or pressure. This was manipulation. Narcissists are not driven by cooperation. They're driven by control. They feign empathy when it suits them. But the moment your pain isn't useful to their narrative, they ignore it, or worse, twist it against you. And when they don't receive constant admiration, they don't just get quiet, turn cold, dismissive, even cruel. They crave validation like oxygen. And any threat to their inflated image, whether it's constructive feedback or simple disagreement, is met with defensiveness, rage, or calculated revenge. Most dangerous of all, they gaslight. They rewrite history, deny things they've clearly said, and subtly erode your sense of reality. Seneca once warned that the mind that is anxious about the future is miserable. Narcissists depend on that anxiety. They want you off balance, unsure of yourself, clinging to their approval like a lifeline. The Stoics teach us that our peace lies in mastering our own mind. If you allow deception to cloud your thoughts, your sense of truth will erode. Recognizing narcissistic traits early allows you to reclaim your clarity. Pay close attention to how someone responds when you draw a line. Healthy people reflect. Narcissists retaliate. And that reaction, that resistance to accountability, is often the first step to revealing who they really are. The one question that exposes a narcissist. There is one question, a single, .com, deliberate question, that can unmask a narcissist in real time. It doesn't require shouting, confrontation, or emotional fireworks. It requires clarity, courage, and restraint. When asked with composure, it cuts through the fog of manipulation and forces a moment of reckoning. The question is this: why do your emotions always seem to outweigh everyone else's? Or, put differently, what makes your discomfort more important than the impact your actions have on others? At its core, this question isn't just about words, it's about what it reveals. Narcissists are skilled at dodging direct accountability. They talk in circles, deflect blame, twist facts, but a question that targets their sense of entitlement and exposes their disregard for others hits at the very foundation of their identity. They can't answer it without revealing the truth they work so hard to hide. I remember once having a close personal relationship with someone named Rick. At first, Rick seemed charming, thoughtful, and emotionally intense in all the right ways. His passion was magnetic. Stories pulled you in. But as time went on, a pattern began to reveal itself. My feelings were often dismissed as too sensitive, or bad timing. If I expressed hurt, Rick would either withdraw into a cold silence or explode in defensiveness. He never took responsibility, only redirected the blame. What started as subtle discomfort grew into confusion, and eventually a kind of emotional fog. I tried to bring up boundaries gently, only to end up apologizing for needing them in the first place. The turning point came when I asked him calmly, "Why does your pain always have to come first?" I wasn't trying to win an argument. I was trying to understand. But what I received was a storm of self-pity accusations and a dramatic retelling of how I had let him down. Not once did he acknowledge the impact of his words or behavior. That moment exposed everything I needed to know. Rick wasn't confused. He was controlling. He didn't misunderstand me. He dismissed me because in his world, only his needs mattered. And that's the point. A narcissist is not interested in truth. They are interested in dominance. They thrive not because others don't see them, but because others hesitate to challenge them. The Stoics understood this dynamic well. Epictetus taught that it is not what happens to us that defines us, but how we respond in that moment. Your goal is not to change the narcissist. It's to reveal, to illuminate, and to observe. You ask the question, then let the silence speak. Their response or their inability to respond tells you more than any argument ever could. Psychologically, the narcissist cannot process criticism that challenges their self-image. They must protect the illusion that they are always right, always the victim, always justified. When you ask a question that pierces that illusion, they react not with logic, but with emotional warfare. Gaslighting, projection, deflection. This isn't a flaw in your communication. It's a flaw in their character. And once you see that clearly, you stop negotiating for dignity. This is where Stoicism becomes a powerful tool, not to suppress your emotions, but to protect them, to hold your ground without aggression, to speak truth without expectation, and to reclaim the power they've been quietly siphoning from you. You don't need to win a fight with a narcissist. You only need to stop playing their game. This one question gives you that exit, and once you've seen the mask slip, you'll never unsee it. If you found these insights valuable, let me know by commenting yes below. Your thoughts matter, and I'd love to hear from you. Setting boundaries. The Stoic defense. Knowing how to expose a narcissist is powerful, but what you do next is what truly determines whether you heal or remain entangled. Recognition is just the first step. The real battle is protecting your peace after the mask has fallen, and that's where most people get caught. Because a narcissist doesn't walk away quietly. They test you, they press every button, they push your limits just to see if you'll break. And if you don't set boundaries firm, it's non-negotiable boundaries, they'll find their way back in, using the same tactics they always have. Charm, guilt, rage, silence. That's why setting boundaries isn't just a response, it's a declaration. It says, I see you now. I know the game, and I'm not playing anymore. I once had a relative, let's call her Diane, who appeared to be the pillar of family strength. She cooked the meals, organized the holidays, always had a story to tell. But underneath that image was a pattern, subtle emotional control, guilt-laced expectations, and a quiet intolerance for anyone who didn't fall in line. When I began setting limits, saying no to her unannounced visits, or refusing to drop everything for her last-minute demands, her response wasn't concern or understanding. It was emotional warfare. She spread stories that I was ungrateful. She cried to other family members about how distant I had become, and at first I felt that familiar pull to defend myself, to explain, to soften my stance so she wouldn't feel hurt. But I didn't, and that's when I began to understand the true strength of Stoicism. A narcissist does not respect boundaries spoken through apology. They hear weakness in explanations. When you say, I'm not comfortable with this, they don't hear clarity, they hear an opportunity to negotiate. They will twist your words, shift the focus, and reframe your boundaries as a personal attack. It's not about finding understanding, it's about keeping control. That's why the Stoics never taught us to argue or beg to be respected. They taught us to master ourselves, to be immovable in our principles and untouchable in our inner calm. Epictetus said it plainly. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. The narcissist's reaction is not your burden. Your duty is to your own peace. Most people, when they try to set a boundary, fall into the trap of over-explaining. They try to make the narcissist understand, to prove that their needs are valid. But to someone who doesn't care about your needs, this only opens the door to manipulation. The more words you offer, the more they weaponize them. The Stoic approach is different. It's clean, simple, direct. You don't say, I wish you'd respect me. You act as if your self-respect is already non-negotiable. You don't beg for peace. You live in it. Of course, the narcissist doesn't back down easily. Diane didn't. When her usual tactics stopped working, she escalated. She tried harder to provoke me, making sharper comments, crafting more dramatic stories about how I'd hurt her. And I stayed silent, not cold, not cruel, just grounded. I didn't defend myself, didn't retaliate. I simply reinforced the same line each time, without emotion, without hesitation. And eventually, the noise quieted not because she had changed, but because she realized I wouldn't. Here's the psychology behind it. Narcissists feed on emotional response, anger, guilt, confusion. They're not bothered by conflict. They require it. Emotional engagement gives them power. But when you become emotionally unavailable to their provocations, you strip that power away. The silence is deafening to them. The lack of reaction is like a mirror they can't control. They may push harder at first, hoping to shake you, but if you hold your ground, they begin to unravel not because you've defeated them, but because their game cannot continue without your participation. And that's what Stoic boundaries look like. They aren't loud or unshakable. They don't need justification because they're not asking for permission. Seneca wrote, "He who angers you conquers you." Every time you respond with outrage, every time you explain to someone who refuses to listen, you give them the keys to your peace. But when you choose stillness, not passivity, but strategic calm, you win. Not because you fought harder, but because you refuse to engage at all. And here's the truth. A narcissist does not respect your words. They respect your consistency. When they see that your boundary doesn't bend not once, not with guilt, not with silence, not with insults, they begin to understand that the old tactics don't work anymore. They may accuse you of being cold. They may try to turn others against you. But if your inner compass is intact, none of that matters. Peace, after all, is not the absence of conflict. It's the presence of strength. At first, this isn't easy. You'll feel the urge to soften, to explain. You'll second-guess yourself and worry about what others think. But over time, something deeper takes root. You realize you never needed their validation to begin with. You don't need their permission to set limits. You don't need their understanding to protect your own spirit. What you need, what Stoicism offers, is the ability to stand in the middle of a storm and not let the wind move you. Taking action, protecting your peace. Understanding narcissism in theory is helpful, but it's not enough. Growth doesn't come from knowing. It comes from doing. You only start to free yourself when you take that knowledge and apply it in the moments that matter most. Narcissists thrive in silence, in hesitation, in your need to explain, defend, or seek approval. But the moment you stop explaining and start observing, the dynamic shifts. And when you ask the right question, not to challenge them, but to reveal them, they cannot keep the mask on for long. I once worked with a woman named Claire. On the surface, she was collaborative, pleasant, even complimentary. But as time passed, I noticed she had a habit of offloading tasks. At first, it seemed harmless. "Can you help me with this one thing?" But the one thing became routine. She'd conveniently disappear when deadlines were near and praise the team's efforts as her own. For a long time, I didn't say anything. I told myself I was being a team player, that I was helping, that maybe she really was overwhelmed. But eventually, I realized this wasn't teamwork. It was exploitation wrapped in charm. The day I told Claire I could no longer take on her responsibilities, her entire demeanor changed. The compliments vanished, the friendly tone shifted, and she immediately played the victim. She said she was struggling, that she thought I had her back, that she couldn't believe I'd let her down when she needed help most. That moment was the test. A person with integrity might have said, "Thank you for letting me know," or at least asked what they could do differently. But a narcissist doesn't acknowledge your boundary. They question your loyalty. Instead of getting pulled into the drama, I asked a simple question. "Why is your time always more valuable than mine?" Her eyes froze, her face changed. She didn't answer. Instead, she brushed it off, made a joke, and pivoted to another topic. That silence told me everything. Narcissists don't answer those questions because they can't do it without revealing the truth. They don't see you as equal. They see you as a tool. In family, the dynamic is different but equally damaging. A cousin of mine, David, always criticized my choices, whether it was the job I took, the people I dated, or the way I spent holidays. He always had something to say, and for years, I tried to defend myself, to explain why I lived the way I did. But nothing ever changed. The more I defended, the more he undermined, until one day, I stopped trying. I asked instead, "What do you gain by tearing down my choices?" He looked stunned, as if I had broken some unspoken contract. Then he got defensive, said I was being dramatic, accused me of being sensitive. But in that moment, it didn't matter anymore. I saw him clearly. Narcissists do not offer you understanding. They offer you confusion wrapped in criticism. Their respect is conditional, and it disappears the moment you stop bending to please them. And in relationships, the signs are even more personal. If your partner never acknowledges your emotions, never pauses to reflect on how their words land, never takes ownership for causing hurt, then you're not in a relationship. You're in a performance where your role is to support someone else's ego. I once had a partner who did this skillfully. Every concern I raised was dismissed. If I was upset, I was told I was too emotional. If I brought up something painful, it was turned into a lecture about how hard he had it. It took me too long to realize he wasn't listening. He was deflecting. In the moment I asked, "Why does my pain never matter in this relationship?" his defensiveness cracked wide open. He launched into a monologue about how I was ungrateful, about all he had done, about how he never felt appreciated. It wasn't a conversation. It was damage control. Stoicism teaches us to stop expecting what someone cannot give. It teaches us to accept people as they are, not as we wish they'd be. And that's the hardest lesson of all. We wait for closure, for the apology, for the admission of guilt. But a narcissist will never offer that, not because they can't, but because they won't. Their image matters more than the truth. And the moment you stop waiting, the moment you stop needing validation from someone who only sees you as a reflection of themselves, you get your power back. The questions you ask are not meant to fix the narcissist. They are meant to expose the reality so that you can act with clarity. If someone reacts to your boundary with anger, guilt-tripping, or silence, you already have your answer. That's not respect. It's control. And you don't owe anyone access to your life who treats your feelings like a threat. The Stoics never told us to fight people. We are told to understand them, to see clearly, and then choose wisely. The moment you stop engaging, you win. The moment you stop justifying, you reclaim your voice. And when you let someone reveal who they truly are without argument, without debate, you get the truth you've been searching for, not from their words, but from their behavior. And once you have that, you don't need closure. You just need the courage to walk away. That's the ultimate power of Stoicism, not in changing others, but in mastering the way you respond. If you found these insights valuable, let me know by commenting yes below. Your thoughts matter, and I'd love to hear from you. Applying Stoic principles in real time, understanding how to deal with narcissists is not just about recognizing their patterns. It's about knowing how to respond in the moment when it matters most. Awareness gives you clarity, but action gives you freedom. Narcissists don't break you by being openly cruel. They do it by turning every conversation into a trap, making you question your own reality. That's why the strategy isn't to fight back louder or argue harder. It's to remain calm, stay rooted in your truth, and ask the kind of question that flips the dynamic question. They can't answer honestly without revealing their true intent. Take, for instance, a friend of mine, Rachel, who had been in a long-term relationship with someone she once believed was simply misunderstood. He was charming in public, charismatic with friends, and rarely raised his voice. But in private, every disagreement became her fault. If she said something hurt her, he told her she was being too sensitive. If she asked for help, she was accused of being demanding. It wasn't overt abuse. It was erosion, slow, subtle, and deeply psychological. For years, Rachel tried everything, explaining, compromising, even changing herself to meet his expectations. But the turning point came when, instead of defending her emotions, she asked one clear question: "Why is it so hard for you to respect how I feel?" And just like that, the performance ended. He didn't answer. He deflected, got angry, called her selfish. That reaction told her more than any apology ever could. Narcissists cannot tolerate being seen. They thrive on projection, not reflection. And when you hold up a mirror, they either shatter it or run from it. This is the power of Stoic thinking in action. Marcus Aurelius taught that we should waste no time arguing about what a good person should be. We should be one. That principle is at the core of dealing with toxic personalities. Your job is not to fix them or make them understand. It is to remain rooted in your integrity. Ask the question, observe the reaction, and let it guide your next move. You'll notice a pattern. When you stop explaining yourself, narcissists become unstable. When you stop reacting emotionally, they lose control because they rely on your engagement to sustain their power. In family dynamics, this plays out just as predictably. You may have a sibling or parent who constantly makes backhanded comments, disguising criticism as humor, always testing the line. Maybe it's the aunt who smirks at your career, or the brother who mocks your decisions under the guise of just being honest. In the past, you may have laughed along or tried to explain your perspective, hoping for empathy. But narcissists don't seek connection. They seek superiority. The moment you ask them calmly, "Why do you feel the need to diminish others to make your point?" they are exposed. And more importantly, you are no longer playing the role they cast you in. The key here is not to argue. Stoicism isn't passive. It's precise. You're not suppressing emotion. You're choosing where to place it. Instead of pouring your energy into people who thrive on confusion, you withdraw your engagement and stand firm. The Stoics remind us, we cannot control how others behave, but we can always control how we respond. And in the presence of a narcissist, the strongest response is often silence paired with a firm boundary. It may not feel natural at first. We've been conditioned to seek resolution, to earn peace through compromise. But with narcissists, there is no mutual ground, only shifting sand. Every time you offer understanding, they twist it into ammunition. So you stop. You ask your question, and when the answer never comes, you let that be your answer. This isn't cruelty, it's clarity. Eventually, you come to a powerful realization. You don't need their apology. You don't need their change. You only need the courage to stop feeding a cycle that was never meant to serve you. As Seneca reminds us, most of our suffering doesn't come from reality, but from the stories we tell ourselves about it. The moment you stop telling yourself that you owe your peace to someone else's approval, you win. If you've ever walked away from a conversation feeling smaller, it's unheard, or questioning your own worth, know this: it wasn't your fault. Narcissists are masters of disguise, but today you've taken back your power with one question that cuts through the fog. You're no longer here to explain, to fix, or to prove your value to those who refuse to see it. You're here to protect your peace. That's your strength. That's Stoicism in action. So if this message spoke to something deep in you, if you felt even a flicker of clarity, courage, or calm, hold on to that. Say it out loud, or type it in the comments. Hold your power. And if you're ready to keep building that strength, I invite you to subscribe. Join this growing community of people learning to walk through life with clarity, wisdom, and quiet confidence. Hit the like button if this brought value to you. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Turn on the bell so you never miss what's coming next. Because this journey isn't just about seeing others clearly. It's about finally seeing yourself. And once you do, you'll never go back.